My child, stop scrolling and remain here for a moment, because what you are about to hear did not reach you by accident. Something has been waiting for you in the silence. Something written with trembling hands, hidden feelings, and a heart that could no longer pretend to be calm. Before tomorrow arrives, there is a truth your soul must be prepared to receive. Your soulmate wrote a secret love letter, and although your eyes may not have seen it yet, heaven witnessed every word. Do not leave now. There is a reason this message found you at this exact moment. You may believe this is simply another passing sign, another emotional thought appearing at the end of a long day, but something deeper is unfolding behind what you can currently see. A person connected to your heart has been carrying words they were too afraid to speak aloud. Those words did not disappear. They gathered weight. They followed them through quiet mornings, restless afternoons, and sleepless nights. And then, when their heart could no longer contain the pressure, they began to write. They did not write casually. They did not write because they were bored, lonely, or seeking temporary attention. They wrote because a truth inside them had reached its breaking point. They wrote because every attempt to forget you brought your memory back more clearly. They wrote because there are emotions that cannot remain hidden forever, no matter how carefully someone tries to lock them away. Pause here and listen closely. The letter was not supposed to exist. Your soulmate had promised themselves they would remain silent. They convinced themselves that keeping their distance was the wiser choice. They told their mind that too much time had passed, too many misunderstandings had formed, and too many unspoken fears stood between you. But the heart does not always obey the plans of the mind. Sometimes love waits quietly, appearing to disappear, while secretly becoming stronger beneath the surface. That is what happened here. For a long time, this person tried to live as though your connection had not changed them. They smiled when others were watching. They answered ordinary questions with ordinary words. They continued with their responsibilities and pretended they were not searching for signs of you in places you no longer stood. But when they were alone, their strength became more difficult to maintain. Your name entered their thoughts without warning. A song reminded them of something they never told you. A familiar place awakened a memory they thought had faded. A simple sentence spoken by someone else suddenly sounded like your voice. And each time this happened, they felt the same question rise inside them: what if I lose the chance to tell the truth? Do not skip this moment, because the answer to that question is what created the letter. They were not planning to write to you that night. In fact, they were trying to do anything except think about you. They placed distractions around themselves. They opened conversations they did not care about. They watched the hours move slowly forward. Yet beneath every distraction, there was an ache they could not explain to anyone. Then something happened. It was small enough that another person might have ignored it, but to your soulmate, it felt like heaven touched a hidden wound. They came across something connected to you. It may have been your name, an old message, a photograph, a memory, a place, or even a feeling that arrived so suddenly it took their breath away. Whatever it was, it broke through the wall they had built. For several moments, they simply sat there. They did not move. They did not speak. They stared into the quiet as if your presence had entered the room without opening the door. And in that silence, they realized something that frightened them more than rejection. They realized they had never stopped loving you in the way they claimed. That truth changed the atmosphere around them. Their breathing became heavier. Their thoughts became louder. Every unfinished conversation returned. Every moment they wished they had handled differently replayed before them. They remembered times when they acted distant while secretly hoping you would come closer. They remembered words they withheld because vulnerability felt dangerous. They remembered the expression on your face when you needed reassurance, and the guilt of knowing they may not have given it. My beloved child, this letter was born from regret, but it was not written only from sadness. It was written from awakening. Your soulmate has begun to understand the value of what existed between you. Not because someone told them. Not because they suddenly became afraid of being alone. They understand because life without your emotional presence revealed what your presence had quietly provided. You brought something into their world that could not be easily replaced. Perhaps you made them feel seen when they were accustomed to being misunderstood. Perhaps your energy brought peace to parts of them that were always restless. Perhaps you challenged them to be honest, and that honesty frightened them. Perhaps your love carried a gentleness they did not know how to receive at the time. They did not fully appreciate it while it was near. But distance has a way of revealing what closeness once concealed. The letter begins carefully. At first, the words are controlled. They try to sound calm, almost as though they are writing an ordinary message. They may have started by saying they did not know whether you would ever read it. They may have written that they had been thinking for a long time and could no longer keep everything inside. But after the first few lines, something shifted. The honesty became deeper. The letter stopped sounding like something meant to protect their pride and began sounding like something written by a heart surrendering its defenses. They confessed that your absence affected them more than they allowed anyone to know. They admitted there were moments when they almost reached out but stopped themselves at the last second. They revealed how many times they imagined what they would say if they saw you again. And then they wrote a sentence they had never spoken aloud. A sentence about you. A sentence that made their hands pause. Stay with me, because this is where the hidden truth becomes more personal. Your soulmate wrote that you are not someone they simply remember. You are someone they continue to feel. There is a difference. A memory belongs to the past. A feeling remains alive in the present. They can distract themselves from a memory, but a feeling appears in unexpected moments. It enters the room when no one else is there. It changes the meaning of ordinary days. It makes someone compare every new connection to the one they were unable to forget. Your soulmate has done this more than once. They have looked at others and noticed what was missing. They have listened to conversations and remembered the depth they felt with you. They have attempted to convince themselves that moving forward meant leaving you behind, but their heart recognized the difference between moving forward and running away. That realization is inside the letter. They do not blame you for everything. They no longer see the story as simply one person being right and the other being wrong. They have begun to understand how fear shaped their choices. Fear of rejection. Fear of commitment. Fear of being deeply known. Fear that if they fully opened their heart and lost you, the pain would be unbearable. But here is the truth they finally discovered: remaining silent did not protect them from pain. It created a different kind of pain. The pain of wondering. The pain of imagining what might have happened if they had been braver. The pain of remembering moments when love was present, but pride spoke louder. The pain of not knowing whether you still carry a place for them in your heart. This is why the letter became urgent. Before tomorrow, something may change. Not necessarily in the way your mind expects. This does not mean you must chase anyone, force an outcome, or make a decision before you are ready. Divine timing does not demand panic. But there is a window opening in the emotional world between you and this person. A moment of truth is approaching, and your awareness matters. The letter may still be hidden in a drawer, saved as an unsent message, folded beneath something personal, or held in a place only they know. It may not yet be physically moving toward you. But spiritually, its truth has already begun traveling. That is why you have felt unusual emotions recently. Perhaps you have thought of them without knowing why. Perhaps your heart became heavy at a strange hour. Perhaps you dreamed of a conversation that felt more real than an ordinary dream. Perhaps you sensed someone wanting to speak but could not identify who. These moments may not be proof of a guaranteed reunion, but within this fictional sacred story, they are signs of emotional energy seeking expression. Your soulmate's heart is no longer as silent as it once was. Do not misunderstand this. The letter is not perfect. It does not erase the past. It does not automatically repair every wound or answer every difficult question. Love can be sincere and still require maturity. Regret can be real and still need action. Words can open a door, but trust must be rebuilt through consistency. Heaven is not asking you to abandon wisdom. Heaven is preparing you to hear truth without losing yourself. This is important, because your soulmate knows that you have changed. They know, or at least they sense, that the version of you who once waited endlessly may no longer exist. They know you have survived nights when you wanted answers but received silence. They know you learned to gather the broken parts of yourself without the apology you deserved. They know you may not welcome them with the same open arms they once took for granted. That is one reason the letter has remained secret. They are afraid the truth has arrived too late. They imagine you reading it with tears in your eyes, but they do not know whether those tears would come from love, anger, relief, or closure. They imagine you reaching the final line and sitting in silence. They imagine you understanding everything they failed to explain. Yet they also imagine you turning away. This fear has delayed them. But something inside them is becoming stronger than fear. The need to be honest. There comes a moment when a person can no longer carry an unsent truth without being changed by it. Your soulmate has reached that threshold. Every day they remain silent, the letter feels heavier. Every time they consider destroying it, their heart resists. Every time they tell themselves you no longer need to know, something inside whispers that you deserve the truth. And you do. You deserve to know that you were not easily forgotten. You deserve to know that your love made an impact, even if the person receiving it did not know how to respond. You deserve to know that silence did not always mean indifference. Sometimes silence was confusion. Sometimes it was emotional immaturity. Sometimes it was fear disguised as distance. None of this excuses the pain you experienced, but it may explain why the connection felt unfinished. There is something unfinished here. That does not automatically mean the relationship must return in the same form. Sometimes unfinished energy leads to reconciliation. Sometimes it leads to an honest conversation. Sometimes it leads to forgiveness, clarity, or peaceful release. The extraordinary part is not simply that the letter exists. The extraordinary part is that the truth within it may free both of you from a story built on assumptions. But one line in the letter carries more weight than all the others. Your soulmate wrote about the moment they realized you might truly be gone. It was not when you stopped speaking. It was not when distance first appeared. It was not even when they saw you continuing with your life. The realization came later, in a moment no one else noticed. They were thinking about the future. Not the past, the future. They imagined a celebration, a journey, a quiet home, a difficult day, or an important achievement. And without effort, they pictured you there. Your face appeared in a future they had never admitted they wanted. Then reality returned, and they understood that the future they imagined might happen without you. That thought shook them. They could tolerate missing the past. What they could not tolerate was the possibility of missing an entire future. So they wrote. They wrote that there were things they wanted to tell you when there was still time. They wrote that you had entered parts of their heart no one else had reached. They wrote that they were sorry for the confusion they created. They wrote that they should have spoken when you were still close enough to hear them without doubt. Then they stopped. They looked at what they had written and felt exposed. For a moment, they nearly deleted everything. Do not skip now, because what prevented them from destroying the letter was not nostalgia. It was a promise. A promise they had made privately, perhaps during prayer, perhaps in tears, perhaps while staring at the night and asking for a sign. They promised that if their feelings remained after a certain amount of time, they would stop lying to themselves. They promised that if your name continued returning to their heart, they would write the truth. They promised that if they received one final confirmation, they would find a way to let you know. And then the confirmation came. It arrived in a way that felt too precise to ignore. Perhaps they heard words you once said repeated by someone who could not have known. Perhaps they saw something connected to a private memory. Perhaps they dreamed of you and woke with the same sentence echoing inside them. Perhaps they felt a sudden peace after asking whether they should finally tell you. Whatever form it took, they interpreted it as permission to continue. The next part of the letter became even more honest. They wrote about their mistakes. Not vague mistakes. Specific ones. They admitted there were times they knew you needed reassurance and they withheld it. They admitted they acted unaffected because they feared showing how deeply you mattered. They admitted they may have listened to outside opinions instead of trusting the connection they personally experienced with you. Someone may have influenced their thinking. This does not necessarily mean another romantic person. It may have been a friend, relative, past experience, social expectation, or inner wound that kept warning them not to trust love. Your soulmate allowed a voice that did not understand the full story to become louder than their own heart. They regret that now. The letter contains a quiet confession. They let fear create a version of you that was not completely true. They questioned your intentions when they should have asked you directly. They interpreted your silence through their insecurities. They assumed your strength meant you did not need tenderness. They may even have believed you would always remain available, no matter how long they delayed. But your distance taught them differently. You did not stop caring because your heart was false. You stepped back because your soul became tired of surviving on uncertainty. Heaven saw that. Heaven saw how many times you searched for meaning in mixed signals. Heaven saw the nights you replayed conversations, wondering whether you had asked for too much. Heaven saw the moment you began blaming yourself for someone else's inability to communicate. Listen carefully, you were not too much for wanting clarity. You were not difficult for needing honesty. You were not unworthy because someone was unprepared to receive the depth you offered. This letter does not arrive to prove your value. Your value existed before the first word was written. The letter arrives as a witness. It confirms that the love you gave was felt, even when it was not properly honored. Yet there is more. Your soulmate did not only write about regret. They wrote about hope. This is the part they are most afraid for you to read. They imagined a conversation with you, not one filled with dramatic promises, but one where both of you finally speak without masks. They imagined telling you what happened inside them during the silence. They imagined listening to your pain without defending themselves. They imagined asking whether any path still exists between you. They do not know your answer. That uncertainty is why the letter feels so vulnerable. They are not certain you still love them. They are not certain you will believe them. They are not certain that honesty can repair what fear damaged. But they have reached a point where truth matters more than control. My beloved child, stay until the end, because the greatest revelation is not that they wrote, "I miss you." Those words are present in some form, but they are not the center of the letter. Missing someone can come from habit. Missing someone can come from loneliness. What they wrote goes deeper. They wrote that loving you changed the way they understand themselves. Through you, they discovered how guarded they had become. Through your absence, they saw the consequences of emotional avoidance. Through the memory of your love, they realized that a genuine connection cannot be managed like an ordinary situation. They wrote that you became a mirror. Not a mirror showing only beauty, but one revealing the parts of them that still needed healing. Your sincerity exposed their hesitation. Your emotional courage highlighted their fear. Your willingness to care forced them to face how often they had run from what they truly wanted. This is why the connection felt intense. It was not merely romantic. It was transformational. You did not enter their life only to make them feel loved. You entered their life and awakened something they could no longer put back to sleep. The same may be true for you. This connection forced you to recognize where you had abandoned your own needs to preserve closeness. It taught you that love without communication can become confusion. It revealed the difference between spiritual connection and emotional availability. It showed you that feeling destined toward someone does not mean you must accept inconsistency. You have been growing through this. And now, the person who once resisted growth is beginning to change. Do not rush to conclusions. A written confession is the beginning of accountability, not the completion of it. Let actions speak. Let time reveal sincerity. Let peace, not urgency, guide your choices. Yet remain open to truth, because the truth may arrive in a form you did not expect. Before tomorrow, you may notice a sign of movement. A message may appear. A memory may return with unusual intensity. Someone may mention this person. You may dream of a sealed envelope, written words, a doorway, or a conversation. You may simply wake with a deep knowing that something has shifted. Do not become anxious if nothing visible happens immediately. The phrase, "before tomorrow," in this spiritual story is not designed to trap you in fear. It symbolizes the closing of one emotional chapter and the arrival of another. Something cannot remain hidden in the same way much longer. Your soulmate is standing at a decision. Keep the letter secret and continue living with the weight of unsaid truth, or allow the truth to leave their hands and enter yours. They have imagined both outcomes. In one, they remain silent and watch time carry you farther away. In the other, they risk rejection but finally honor what their heart has been saying. Neither path feels easy. But only one path offers freedom. They know this. Tonight, they may return to the letter. They may read it again, changing a few words, removing sentences that feel too revealing, then adding them back because anything less would be dishonest. They may hold the page or stare at the screen, wondering whether you will understand the emotion behind it. There is one paragraph they have rewritten several times. It is the paragraph where they tell you why they waited. At first, they blamed circumstances. Then timing. Then confusion. But eventually, they crossed those explanations out, because the real reason was simpler and more painful.